It's not uncommon, whether I'm with a group of students or even with a group of adults, for someone to say to me, Mike, how would you change your church? And my initial reaction is to say, how would I change my church? I love my parish. Holy Trinity Parish is a beautiful community to belong to. Our priests and our deacons give great sermons that really challenge us. And the family, the community that we're belonging to, there are lots of wonderful, good, holy people that, they don't mean, of course. Of course, when someone asks me how I would change the church, they're not actually talking about my local parish, the architecture or the community or the preaching, the music, or the other programs. I mean, certainly there are some people who want to change all of those things, but most of the time when I talk to people about their issues with the church, it's issues about church doctrine, what it is that the church teaches and believes. Some people struggle with church doctrine, with church teaching and belief, because they don't understand what it really is. Decades ago, Archbishop Fulton Sheen said, there are not 100 people in the United States who hate the Catholic Church, but there are millions who hate what they wrongly perceive the Catholic Church to be. I think that hasn't changed. I think there are lots of people who have learned all that they know about the church from social media or from YouTube. And they look at it and say, why would I want to be a part of that? The problem is that people who have stuff on social media and YouTube may or may not actually know what they're talking about. The second reason why people struggle with church teaching and belief can be because they find it hard. It may be that they find the expectation of going to church every Sunday is complicated. They've got other things to do. It may be that they find the fact that when they pray, they don't seem to get an answer seems to be frustrating. It may be that the moral standard we're held to is not something that they want to do. Third reason why people struggle with the church, with the teaching and belief of the church, is because either they themselves or someone they know doesn't feel loved, wanted, or welcomed in the church. And like I said, these are all valid reasons. But I don't know that they're reasons to change what the church teaches and believes. I'll speak to each of them. To those who don't feel wanted, welcomed, or loved in the church, I can tell you, after 26 years of working with this church doctrine, of studying it, of teaching people about it, there is no doctrine, there is no verse from the Bible, there is no letter from the Pope that says God hates you, the church hates you, the Pope hates you. In fact, what you see if you really looked at it is that the opposite is true. Pope Francis has often spoken of the church like it's a field hospital, a place that's made up of imperfect people who are seeking to follow Jesus. Jesus himself spent a lot of time around those who were outcasts, around those who wouldn't measure up to the religious standard of the day. Now, he didn't sort of sit there and just endorse whatever they did and say, you do you. He called them to a higher standard. But there was no prerequisite for them being allowed to be in his presence. The same is true of the church. The church is made up of people like you and I who are aware often of the ways we don't measure up to what we're supposed to be. God loves us anyway, and God calls us to a higher standard anyway. To the second objection that people have to church teaching, the idea that it's hard. It is my experience that anything worth doing in life is demanding. Anything that's worth doing is going to demand something of you. Just because the faith is hard doesn't make it invalid. And it would be a mistake to say, well, you know what, people find it hard, so let's just lower the standard. We wouldn't do that with anything else. You wouldn't say, because somebody wants to become a firefighter, but they find the training to be hard, well, let's just lower the standard. No, we want firefighters who can reach a certain standard because they're the ones who save our lives. You often hear people talk about the fact that it is our role, it is our responsibility in life to become the, quote, best version of ourselves. In church speak, we would say that's to become holy or to become a saint. You don't want the church to lower the standard just because sometimes it's difficult. You want the church to walk with us in those difficult moments to help us to become what God created us to be. And to those of you who struggle with the actual doctrines, you don't believe them, you don't agree with them, I would challenge you. Do you really understand them? Do you really know what they're about? Oftentimes I find that like Bishop Sheen, you've got a part of it, and there's a lot of assumptions about what the church is or what the church believes. I would encourage you to go looking for sites, looking for reputable sites that can tell you what the church is all about. Ones I would recommend: Ascension Press or Ascension Presents, Life Team, Word on Fire, and Bishop Robert Barron. These are organizations that have dedicated themselves to trying to bring Catholicism to you, to trying to share Jesus with you and I. If you're willing to dig in and get to know what the faith is really all about, if you're willing to accept the fact that it is challenging, and if you can come to understand the fact that even though the church may not always agree with what we do, the church and God always love who we are, you're well on the way to discovering what Catholicism really is.